that's been my experience, but mostly because I think I'm out here trying to be a good person. So a lot of that presents itself, you know.
Right, it comes back at you.
Yeah, I know there are some other people, they are struggling in some relationships, and they've created the struggle that's in those relationships, and it's just all learning. It's just all learning. So I'm like, wherever we're at.
Right. So. And it helps in the astrology community because we know each other's charts. And so it gives us that little extra edge of empathy, like instead of thinking, where on earth is he coming from? You look at his chart and
Yes, absolutely. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's, it's like a meet and greet, but on the weird day. We're not on a Wednesday like we normally are, but today I just think what a treat. We've had Sally on several times, which thank you for continuing to come over here.
Well, I love coming over and talking with you, Stormy.
It's a real joy. And I think the topic today is really poignant because we spend so much time looking forward to what's next, and the 2022 horoscopes are out and all of this is out, but it's like, well, let's pause and let's look back on what's happened, what has happened in the cycles, so that we can see how to work with them going forward. So it was a brilliant suggestion of a topic. So that's what we're going to do today, you guys. We're going to talk about what has happened already before we jump forward. So welcome back, Ms. Sally.
Well, thank you, Stormy. Yeah, we talked last year on the very day Jupiter and Saturn met in Aquarius. And so we kicked off a 20-year cycle and a 200-year cycle in air. So how did year one of that 200-year cycle go for you, Stormy?
Oh man, it has been it has been a lot. I mean, it has been very, very good. And my chart in total is mostly air. So it has been a very expansive year for me, and the thoughts genuinely, and the ideas, and the rearrangement of my thinking about the way things were being done, where I fit in the world, what I want, all of these things. I have definitely felt the spiritual, mental rearrangement this year. And I have definitely I caught the air, and I am like everywhere right now.
This is your time to shine, right?
Yeah. It's like I got pollinated, kind of like, I'm like, yeah, don't worry, I'm everywhere.
Well, and I would ask people listening, did you find a lot more communicating this year, a lot more thinking, definitely through technology, Aquarius, a lot more use of technology, a lot of thinking about who am I as part of a community too, is Aquarius. So all that's been going on. And so I thought it's a good idea, like you say, to look back, because in understanding where we've been, it's a good way to prepare for moving forward. And, when you look at the beginning of the year, for example, the big story of 2021 was Saturn square Uranus. And so we know the archetypes, freedom and responsibility clashing, but we didn't know exactly how it would manifest. Now we do. Yeah. And so when you look back, you get a sense of how are those planets working out in our lives, both collectively and personally. So I'd invite those of you who are listening, if you have a calendar, if you have a diary, a journal for the past year, pull it up, because we're going to be giving you some dates and looking at different aspects happening at different times throughout the year, and just see how they track in your own life. But, I've mentioned, the clash of the Titans, Saturn, Uranus. We'll get to that. But, the one aspect this year that really was so fun was the Jupiter in Pisces, which happened, in May of 2021. We had Jupiter go into Pisces on May 14th. And on that very day, President Joe Biden said, you don't need to wear masks anymore if you're vaccinated. You can go into stores, you can have large gatherings, you can have 4th of July parties. I mean, we were just set free. So I don't know, do you, Stormy, remember just that excitement of like, oh my gosh, I can walk into the grocery store without a mask? And
yes, and we were, at that time we had to actually step back into California to handle some things for my grandmother who passed away. And so we were experiencing the interstate effects
Mm.
of masking, and people were, I mean, they are like ripping them off in joyousness, truly. I don't know if you want this, but your screen is showing us your files.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go to where we need to be.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
You see Jupiter in Pisces, a yellow slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So anyway, so Jupiter in Pisces, May 14th to July 29th of 2021. And, you know, Jupiter since December of 2019 has been in a Saturn ruled sign. You know, Saturn is its boss when it's in Capricorn and Aquarius. And so, you know, Saturn is a very strict taskmaster. It sets rules, it sets boundaries. And, you know, Jupiter likes to come and help and be the great benefic. And Saturn says to Jupiter, you know, when it's in Capricorn and Aquarius, I don't want any of your flashy stuff while you're here. You know, you're going to be in my house, play by my rules. You're going to help out where you are needed. You're going to give people exactly what they need and nothing more. So Jupiter's wings were pretty much clipped while it's been in Capricorn and then in Aquarius. And granted, you know, Jupiter has helped out. You think about 2020, Jupiter and Capricorn, how much we appreciated the essential workers, how much we appreciated the stability that we did have in spite of all the chaos. In Aquarius, we appreciate certainly the technology that's enabled us to keep our lives moving. We've appreciated the inventiveness of people who developed vaccines and treatments. And so, but all the good stuff that Jupiter likes to do, you know, like traveling, the intermingling of cultures.
That was like,
yeah, even like higher education or going to church, you know, all those things were just like taken out of play. And so when it gets into Pisces, it's almost like Jupiter is that kid dropped off at college. You know, and all of a sudden there's no curfew. He doesn't have to go to class if he doesn't want to. You know, Jupiter is in Pisces, which traditionally is one of his own signs. And so he can just let loose. And so this ended up giving us a very exuberant summer. People doing lots of traveling, making plans. I know in our area, you could not for love or money get a reservation at a campground because they're all full. And so like farmers, like there's an alpaca farmer nearby who just rented out his field and people would camp there and wake up in the morning to see the alpacas. Airbnbs were full. And so people who had an RV parked in their driveway would rent that out on Airbnb. And so people actually found staying in a stranger's RV in their driveway was more exciting than being at home. So right. I don't know if you had a lot of flurry and activity over the summer, Stormy.
Oh, yes. I mean, there was just so much happening. And I just laughed because I did see for the first time that camper in the driveway thing, because I'm a huge Airbnb person. Like we Airbnb like everywhere we go that we can. And I was like, hey, look, you can stay in someone's front yard. You know, like people are like, let me out, you know? Yeah. So there was a lot of that. And I felt like certainly right there in the June, July timeframe, like the beaches in Texas were full, just full. Cause we go to Galveston every year and it was, you know, there were just people everywhere.
Yeah. So that Jupiter in Pisces was just so fun, you know, and we, you know, had the sense that, okay, happy days are here again. We're moving forward. But then what does Jupiter do as we go further into the summer? But it goes retrograde. And it eventually on July 22nd, we learned, you know, we're at another pivotal point in this pandemic and the Delta variant was growing. And by July 29th, Jupiter was back in Aquarius. It almost reminds me of that scene in It's a Wonderful Life. Do you remember George Bailey had his bags all packed and he's ready to see the world and what happens?
Not seeing the world.
He gets a call that his father's been taken ill and he's needed back at the savings and loan. And it's almost like Saturn is saying to Jupiter, you're needed back here. You know, pack up the things in your dorm room, come back home because your job is not finished in Aquarius.
Yeah, which is interesting because the other side of the thought for me was that Saturn, to me in this conversation, was like, Jupiter, I need you to gain the wisdom of how we will engage technology. Like, I need you to sit down, because you're very go see things, and engage this, because this is going to be a part of the new reality, And so in that way, that's where I think that Jupiter in Aquarius did good work, where it was like, okay, well, I can't leave the house, so I'm going to go see all of these things over here online.
Right. Yeah. And find ways to connect with people through technology, and also people trying to run their businesses said, yes. Okay, people can't gather, but we can find ways that people can do the work they need to do sitting at their computer at home. And in fact, a lot of companies now are thinking, maybe we don't need to go back to everyone sitting in an office all day long.
Yeah. And we're even talking about here in the chat about how many people, once we finally got sent home and we came back to a grounded reality of home, it's hard to be out in groups of people now. It's like energetically doesn't feel as sound for some people. And I have definitely seen that here in Colorado, and just in my own social and family group. Like, my husband is a super hermit now. For him, coming home was like gold.
That's what he was really craving.
Yeah. And so now, like, going out into the world he does not enjoy it, like, at all.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I find if I'm out somewhere where there's a lot of people, I can't sleep that night. It's just like the energy of it or something is just like threw me off. So I think you're right. When Jupiter came back into Aquarius, it really had some lessons to learn still. Plus, it helped out, we had to get kids back into school safely. And let's put some policies and procedures in place. We need to continue to work with vaccination. Do we need a booster shot? So Jupiter, has that rolling up its sleeves, that can-do optimism with difficult problems. But Jupiter's not going to be in Aquarius forever. Jupiter will return to Pisces on December 29th of this year. And so it will have learned all of its lessons. It will have developed its technologies. And now it is moving into Pisces. And it will be there until May. And then it will slip back into Pisces at the end of the year, from November 28th to December 20th. So a lot of astrologers are kind of pointing to this as, okay, finally we'll be moving forward away from the pandemic. Is that kind of what you're hearing too, Stormy? That this is
it's what I'm hearing, but I feel like we really need the charge of Jupiter, his little stop into Aries. That is what I think really will pull us towards, okay, we've got more things in place. Let's start to pull out of it, because just Jupiter's real move into Pisces, I actually think at first for me, I'm like, I don't know that we're comfortable enough yet when that initially happens. It's almost like a backlash a little bit.
Or kind of a waiting room.
Yeah, like purgatory.
Oh, gosh. Well, let's not tell people 2022 is going to be purgatory, but
no, not for the whole thing, you guys. Well, and you've seen the 2022 reports, you guys. I don't think it's all.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we're going to have Jupiter is in charge. So Jupiter, who loves to bring all good things, is back in charge and no longer having its wings clipped. Yeah. And so I think you're right. It'll be more like a swimming around in that energy. And then, of course, when you get to Aries, which will happen in May, that's when you light the match.
Yeah.
And get things going. Yeah. So I think that's something that we can look forward to as we're moving on. And because we had that little sneak peek of Jupiter in Pisces in the middle of this year, kind of look back at your calendar, what was going on then. How did you feel? This Pisces is a water sign, very emotional, because that's going to tell you something about kind of your state of mind as you move into the upcoming year. So
it's neat to get to stop and do that, because I think it is easy to pass through the year and feel like, okay, I made it through today. I mean, but to stop and like reflect backwards of, okay, where was I really at? There's effort, conscious effort put in that to evaluate really where we were and where our emotions and our lives were at that time. But it's so telltale to help us moving forward, as opposed to, oh God, we made it out of May,
Yeah. And I think your point too, that we might find that kind of clash between we've been nice and safe at home, where we control our environment, and then just that being out, with other people, that boundarylessness, and learning to deal with that again might be a big part of the Jupiter and Pisces as well. Your husband learning how to be out in the world again.
Ooh, yeah. Well, and I don't know if anybody out there, you guys tell me in the chat section, and definitely you too, Sally, but with everything that happened just in the air with COVID and everything else that is already available out there, I've heard many more people speak to neurological and mental challenges just being completely exacerbated by this. So I think that has been hugely contributing.
I think it's interesting, even, as you listen to podcasts or radio, and you hear commercials. One of the commercials you hear most often is for therapists who work with you online.
Yeah.
Are you catching a lot of that?
Yeah.
And people saying, therapy is not something to be ashamed of. It's something that everybody at some point needs. And that kind of awareness of our mental health. Very positive. I think a very positive outcome of all this energy and air. But speaking of energy and air, that brings me to our Mercury retrogrades this year.
Yes.
I always like this saying, may your Mercury always be more fretty and less retrograde.
But it's kind of nice because we do have, at least until the end of the year, we have the consistency of them being in air again. So we have seen some of this work.
Yeah, this was, they are solely in air this year. They didn't go into any other elements. Next year, they're going to start in air and slip back into earth. So we're going to have a combination. So this year, we got a really good life lesson in how to work with Mercury retrograde in air. And I find it the most challenging of all the four elements. I don't know. Do you, Stormy?
No, I love it. I really yes. I do think that is that testament to, first of all, I have an air Mercury.
Okay. So you love it.
Yeah. So I find it very, very beneficial. At least it was this year, for
you like that energy. Yeah. I find it's just when things, like your computer breaks down or your car needs repair or your schedules go awry, with Mercury retrograde. But when it's in air, it's messing with your mind. And I'm finding myself, normally I'm a pretty linear thinker from point A to point B to point C. During Mercury retrogrades, I'm point A, point G, point T. And I'm thinking, I need to sit down and make a list. And then I get busy with something else. And I don't make the list. And so.
Yes, I could definitely, and I don't know if you guys in the chat felt this, but there was definitely a fair bit of that during the Mercury retrogrades where I was like, ding, 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 ding. Like I kind of felt like a ping pong ball where I was like, okay, I don't know how many times I was like, what do I need to put my hands on right now?
Right. Yeah. Give me one small thing I can do instead of, this big picture of everything I need to do.
Yes.
But I think these Mercury retrogrades did help out. Our Jupiter being in Aquarius did help us out with the Mercury retrogrades. That period from January 31st to February 21st was in Aquarius, and it met Jupiter by conjunction 3 times in January and February, both direct and retrograde, then direct again. And so that's the time, if you look back to that time of year, that's when we're trying to figure out the whole vaccination thing, getting the information about it. People are trying to develop it. We're trying to get, 7.5 billion people vaccinated. Huge, huge task. And so I've found that Jupiter being there and meeting Mercury kind of helped us negotiate that time. Did you have to go online multiple times until you finally got an appointment? Did you even figure out where to go? Were you even looking at all the information, confused whether you should get a vaccination or not? When I finally went in, I think it was in March to get mine, So as past the retrograde time, it was just like a finely oiled machine. And I said, boy, you guys are doing a great job. And they said, oh, you should have been here, last month. We had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
And so Jupiter, with that optimism and that can-do spirit, was really helping out, I think, to people saying, okay, we need to put up arrows, we need to put up signs, we need to get the traffic moving. So trying to get that whole system negotiated, and plus policies, who's going to be vaccinated when.
Sure. And to like bring the panic or the anxiety down about it, because I think even people who were solid on, I am going to get it, I'm not going to get it, there was an air of anxiety about the conversation in general. And I do think that Jupiter helped to be like, okay, just your wisdom, your decision here, but let's collectively try and bring the temperature down. If we can.
Yeah, let's just kind of focus. Yeah, some people would tell me, I'm not sure what to believe. And I would say, well, maybe you could just call your doctor. Go to Aquarius, go to the expert.
Yeah.
And, maybe not Twitter, look, find someone that you rely on their information and to provide it to. So I think that Mercury retrograde was helped by Jupiter being in Aquarius. Now, the Gemini Mercury retrograde time was a little more challenging because that was that heyday when Jupiter was in Pisces. And so we're all running around trying to make plans, trying to say, okay, happy days are here again. What do we do first? And so I think with Jupiter and Pisces, it didn't really meet Mercury retrograde by square, but that Mercury retrograde did meet Neptune 3 times by square. So while it added to the fun and exuberance of that time, it also, we were a little bit in a fool's paradise. I don't know, would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. And just with the retrograde in general, that is really when, like, for me, the thinking was super sideways. I think I told everybody I was working with at the time, if I had interviews, I was like, look, we're going to plan in advance to just reschedule this because it is just, the energy just felt so scattered.
It did. Yeah. And we were trying to make plans. We thought maybe later in the summer we would go somewhere, but we weren't sure what would happen. And just that kind of everything up in the air, that tossed salad type of energy. And so Jupiter was not in Aquarius, at that time. It was in Pisces. So it kind of added to the confusion. But Jupiter was firmly back in Aquarius with this last Mercury retrograde, which took place just recently from September 27th to October 19th in Libra. So it was in a nice trine to Jupiter. But what did it do 3 times but square Pluto, which is still in Capricorn? And so I found that was a pretty heavy Mercury retrograde. I don't know if you did, Stormy.
I did. I was just going to ask you, what happened for you? Because I will tell you, like, over here, left and right in my own life, even watching my children and watching people outside, like those relationships, that's, you were answering for some things. You were really looking at this arrangement of all sorts of the ways that we relate and are in relationship. I mean, I felt like it was such the literal interpretation of Libra energy at that particular time. What about for you?
I found the same thing, just kind of questioning, is this relationship really moving forward, or is it stagnating? Is it my fault? A lot of those really heavy questions took place during that time. And also, collectively, we saw things like the Facebook dump that took place. The Pandora Papers were released, which revealed that there were billionaires around the world hiding money, that, if they paid their taxes on that money, we could feed everyone on the planet. So there were just kind of heavy stories like that. Colin Powell, a well-known and beloved diplomat, Mercury in Libra, died of complications from COVID. So we were looking at some pretty serious things. I think there were some trials that were starting in cases that had happened in 2020 involving social justice issues. There was also, the investigations into the Capitol riots were starting to be to move forward in Congress. And so we were being hit with a lot of really heavy truths during this time. And so I've heard it argued that as difficult as that Mercury square Pluto was, that trying to Jupiter, still sitting in there in Aquarius helping out, really gave us the information we needed. It gave us a certain truth that even though it's difficult to learn some of these things, we're better off for knowing.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I just feel like Jupiter's work through Aquarius this year has really been about digging into getting us the wisdom so that we know what to do next. It was like we needed to get the hands-on experience so that we have the wisdom for how we'll continue this going forward. And a lot of things came out too and had their explosion and their expansion with NFTs and cryptocurrencies and all of these things, and the next places where even we'll do digital currency, which I think is attributed a little bit more to Uranus and Taurus and that interaction. But Jupiter got us an understanding in there that this is exploding,
Boy, that's interesting. I hadn't looked at that aspect of it, but I can definitely see with Pluto wealth, Mercury colliding up against it. How is wealth being manipulated? Where are we kind of being misled?
And where are we going next? With Uranus and Taurus, like we were going to redo the currency situation, as has been throughout history a couple times. And this was going to be, I think, a piece of that story, because now it's like you make a little NFT, you make your little picture, and it can be shared a whole bunch of times, and you get paid every time that little picture is shared, and it is the currency. So it's just been really fascinating. I've been learning a lot about that and being able to see its ties to what's been happening in 2021 as well.
So you would say, and during this time, maybe some information came out about it that people really needed to know about.
I think so.
Okay, all right.
I think so, because gosh, I was watching The Crown, and I was remembering the time where they had to devalue the pound in order to kind of stay in the economic game on the global stage. And it was like this horrific situation at the time. And I was thinking about it as I was watching. I was like, yeah, this was a devaluing at that time and a change to the currency. And now we're seeing it where it's like, hey, you need to know the information of where currency is going next. And even if you are in the denial, because during the Jupiter and Pisces portion, I saw people being like, that's stupid. Why would we want to know about that? And then Jupiter got back into Aquarius and certainly came out of retrograde. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. Wait, I think this is where we're going. So it's that like change of currency, and now it's hot and heavy.
Well, and how networks are working together in Aquarius too. Well, that kind of brings me to the next aspect to look at for the year, Pluto in Capricorn, because this is something that's like a drumbeat that's been going on in our lives since 2008. And Pluto won't completely be out of Capricorn until November of 2024. It's going to spend a lot of 2024 in Aquarius, but it's going to have that one last hurrah. And so you think, what happened in the world in 2008? Worldwide economic collapse.
Yeah.
And we're still recovering from that. And a lot of the old systems that failed us are still in place. Which I think the cryptocurrency is probably, kind of chipping away at a bit. But I think once Pluto gets into Aquarius, we're going to see a major overhaul of our economic system worldwide. I don't know, is that too much of a leap?
I don't think so. I think it's exactly and absolutely on time, and I think about the ingress of a planet and how profound that is, and so I'm like, man, when Pluto takes that ingress into Aquarius, we're gonna hope we paid attention in the entry rooms to Bitcoin currency, to what is it, ethereal, or I think that's what it's called, and all of these other things that are digital currencies now. because I think Pluto is going to be like, well, I was trying to tell you. That's not
That the system is breaking down. The rich are getting richer. We've got billionaires, hiding money and shooting themselves into space, and so anyway, so in your own life, in the world, we can definitely see how Pluto and Capricorn is continuing. Oh, another thing, Pluto and Capricorn, the reign of the septuagenarians is what I call it. Because, you think of Capricorn being the elders. And worldwide, most of the leaders are, well into their 70s. We even have people in their 80s. William Shatner at 90 was just shot into space. So this is because I'm one of them. I can throw a little shade on my generation. Pluto and Leo does not want to leave the stage.
No.
We just don't want to leave the stage.
God bless it. I do love you. I love the tenacity, though.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's kind of the last that we're seeing. With, I think, Pluto spending most of 2024 in Aquarius. We're probably going to see the end of the baby boom generation running things. And I just heard, I think it was Sean Nygaard talking about, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, he said to the Pluto and Leo generation, be prepared to relinquish power. Because you never want to do it until now.
And it's almost as if, as quite naturally as these things do happen, it's being pushed kind of off the stage, right? Where it's like you will either adapt to some of this technological forward moving, or you'll naturally kind of have to pass the baton of power. You know what I mean? It's kind of how it seems anyways, especially, man, this whole other set of generations, really are getting it.
Yeah. And especially, I think the Pluto and Libra and Scorpio, they're ready to take over. Pluto and Virgo, I think, has been happy to be kind of there, helping along the way, because they're so good with technology and working all those good Virgo qualities. But, I think Pluto and Libra and Pluto and Scorpio, they aren't going to be content to be the vice president.
Which is so funny, because I feel like the Pluto and Virgo gen was like, okay, we have to take care of our mental health. Like, this is where I think that conversation really started to peak, like mental health, but how do we do that inside of the system that we're in? And so now I will tell you, I'm one of the Pluto Libras, and I do feel like we were shocked for a minute. We're like, oh my God, it's us. We're on.
We're the grown-ups now.
Right?
Yeah, I think it was the Pluto and Leo generation or Pluto and Libra generation that invented the term adulting.
Yes, because I think we were like, because what do you do with that? That's something I personally have thought about, is I'm like, well, we were really starting to take on more technology, and it's like, hey, that's weird. You guys watch too much TV. It's even more now and things like that. But it was like, well, but wait a minute, this might be useful. And the way that I think about that, Sally, is I'm like, oh my gosh, I left a perfectly good job. And I was like, look, I don't know, but I'm going to start this business online, and I think I'm going to be fine for the rest of my life. Right. And then it worked. And I was like, oh my God. And I feel like so many of the Pluto Libras were like that. We were like, yeah, we just kind of did it because we thought it was better for our mental health, like Pluto Virgo told us to do. And now we're going to teach you guys how to do this. Oh my God.
There is a better way. You don't have to slog through life, that you can actually live your life, that Venus ruled sign. You can enjoy your life. We're here to enjoy ourselves.
Right. Yeah. So I do feel if you're Pluto Libra, let me know if you weren't a little bit shocked that it's like, we're on now.
Yeah. That would be a whole other episode, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so anyway, where in your own life, is Pluto and Capricorn? Where has it been chugging away since 2008? I know in our case, we bought a house in 2008 that needed a lot of love. And it's gotten a lot of love. It still needs a lot more love. So that's been that kind of drumbeat that's been constant since then. How about you, Stormy? What about your Capricorn house?
Oh yeah. Well, my Capricorn house is my fifth house, anyways. So,
Mm.
so, so as Pluto has been moving through there, honestly, I've had a lot, with my business, and that's been great. But I've had a lot of focus with my children and watching them and watching them change and develop into, what they'll be next. And that's been really interesting, but also getting to find the vulnerabilities for me in around parenting. And it's been a nice bridge between being a person who is a parent and having a parent. See, so Pluto Libra, right? I'm like, I see all of the generational
sides, yeah.
So it has been really great because the relationship I have with my parents from being a parent has changed profoundly since 2008.
Yeah. And so you've not only been working with your children who are growing and changing, but you've been evolving, or the Pluto word, transforming, as you raise children, that you've been noticing that as well.
Yeah. And Simon Forster, I think, said it the best because he's Pluto Libra as well, but he's a Scorpio, so we had a great talk. But he said, I feel like in that area, I'm bridging the gap of healing my own traumas and misunderstandings and attempting to not pass them on as well, while also understanding, what my kids are going through and then what my parents went through, that how did we all get here? And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can see that being a really powerful energy with Pluto in your fifth house. Kind of what is the ancestral basis of where did all of this come from, and how do we heal it?
Yeah, it's been I don't know. I think it's all been good. I'm pretty positive about it, but it has not been like the easiest thing. That has not been the situation. There was a lot of transformation.
Yeah, Pluto's not easy. And of course, 2020, the year was so marked by, Pluto having a great big party in the house of Capricorn. When the South Node was there and we had the Jupiter and Saturn conjunct it. And so I think astrologer Ann Ortley said, now that everything else has moved on, but Pluto's still there sweeping up. So beware that, Pluto's job is not done in Capricorn yet. And one nice little thing that's going to be happening this year, it hasn't happened yet, is that Venus is spending 4 months in Capricorn. So Pluto, after being kind of by himself here throughout the year, trying to sweep up the mess, is having a lovely assistant coming in with Venus in Capricorn. Because of her retrograde path, she's going to be there from, I think, November 4th or 5th, she went in, and she won't be out until, I think, March 3rd?
March 1st.
March 1st. So that's a good long time for her to just be in there helping out with whatever transformation, whatever breaking down and rebuilding you're dealing with. I think Venus being there is going to bring some sweetness.
I do too. And I think that part of the sweetness there is a desire to love on that area. Just see the beauty in what's happened and love on it, because I typically find when Venus and Pluto get close to each other, there's like this deep desire for affection that tends to show up. But also, Venus just kind of rolls over to Pluto and says thanks.
Yeah I like that. And a lot of pictures, you see pictures of Persephone and Hades, which are kind of ugly pictures. But I like this one, which was very lovely, is that they're more partners.
Yeah.
In this situation. And Pluto says, I've got a really heavy job to do. And Venus says, I'll come in and I'll make things a little easier. Maybe we're going to have some really delicious food on the end of a difficult day. We're going to go out and listen to some beautiful music. And I was thinking, especially Christmas Day, for those who celebrate Christmas, the conjunction will be exact. I don't know how you're seeing that, Stormy, is manifesting.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I just think I was actually just talking about this with a client before that I was like, yeah, first of all, I do think it's that nice like kiss of thank you, but also if there have been attitudes or behaviors that we've had still going on that have been lingering, I think that Venus softens us to the information that it's just not
Mm,
serving us anymore, right? Because Venus in Capricorn,
mm,
I think very concerned with, does this help me achieve? Does it have enough value to stay because it helps me achieve,
mhm.
or attain mastery, however we want to use those two
Right. And
words.
you're
But
thinking Pluto is letting things go too, so she makes it maybe a little easier to let go.
yeah, I definitely think so, which thank goodness, right?
Yeah, like what am I clinging to here? And that question. And so maybe Chris, with it being around the holidays, whatever undercurrents are there, you might just suddenly be able to release them and let them go. Maybe things that have even been brewing since 2008. So I thought that was a really lovely aspect happening at the end of 2021. But of course, the big kahuna is Saturn square Uranus, which even though we have the three exact squares in 2021, the two planets are within orb of each other for 2 years, from December of 2020 until January of 2023. So you can't just say, phew, December 24th is that last square, we're home free. No, we're still dealing with that clash. Uranus, freedom. I just got to be me. I just want to break loose of all restraint. And it's interesting in the sign of Taurus, which is a very self sufficient sign. This is not a collective sign. This is a sign that says, I can clear the land, I can grow my food, I can take care of my family. So just that self sufficiency. And Uranus in there is is giving people that energy. I can make the best decisions for my life. But then cooking, I kind of like how these two meet in the square here. Cooking away, you think about Saturn, which responsibility, in Aquarius, which is a social sign, so social responsibility. What you do influences everybody else. You need to take into account the effect of your behavior and decisions on the collective. Mm-hmm. And so those two, and I mean, where do we even begin to count the number of ways that we've seen that clash in our world this year?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Just even, I mean, we could just pick a spot to start.
It's throw like, a dart at it.
How about the Great Resignation? Let's start there. How, any one of these things that really clashed into, I don't think we're going to do it that way, because I do think that with all of the energies involved, it's kind of Taurus that's just on its own. Saturn, Uranus, and Aquarius, they're a tribe, they're a team. So there is a wisdom in not trying to force or resist change. So, I mean, we could pick a spot and analyze it to the truth, right?
And we even saw it on January 6th was the day Mars went into Taurus. And it was, going to meet up with Uranus and square Saturn. And that was the day, of course, people who said, I believe that the person I voted for should be president. And everyone else is saying, no, collectively, we have a system. We vote, we count them. That's who becomes president, not just who you want to be president. So that clash was, just right there on the Capitol steps. And wasn't one person even dressed as kind of a bull with horns? And
yep.
So that was just like a big visual of what was going on this year. And so, definitely these clashes between my desire for freedom, my feeling it's my right to make the best decisions for myself and my family, and then social policies that say we need to put policies in place that might limit your freedom, but yet they keep the rest of the world safe or healthy. But I think the big story in 2021 with this clash, I think that the major player has been there and we haven't seen her because we're watching all these other dramas, and that is Mother Earth.
Oh, yeah. Uranus and Taurus is like waking up a mountain. Right? But the brilliance of that, Sally, is that when you rumble a mountain, the gems that are within it rise to the surface.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, what's coming up?
Gary Caton talks a lot about the alchemical symbol for Earth, that it's down and in, and this is where the juice and the minerals and the gems are. They're not usually laying across the top, and you'll never get them if you don't dig.
Yeah, and if they haven't been, if it's not shaken, we'll never even see that they're there.
Absolutely. So how many people this year can speak to that, where they're like, wait a minute, I have this skill that I can do from home and be with my family, or do, whatever else, where it's like, I wouldn't have accessed this if my world didn't get shaken up.
Right. The mountain that was shaken was your job, and and the way you earn a living, and now you can find new ways of doing it. Yep. And like the labor shortage right now, a lot of people have figured out they can spend, 20 hours a week driving an Uber rather than working a drive-through at McDonald's for 40 hours a week. Why? So that kind of balance of freedom and responsibility, they're finding it. But I think the other thing too, at the exact squares in February and in June, February, we were having that horrible cold crossing the south part of the United States, especially Texas, just unheard of frigid temperatures that were cracking electrical grids and leaving people without power for days. June 14th was the first day of an unparalleled heat wave in the American West. I live in the Pacific Northwest. We had temperatures that had never, ever been recorded, well above 100 in that early part of the summer. And so we're seeing Mother Earth is really starting to demand attention. She's saying, we've had Saturn and Aquarius. We believe in progress. We want to raise the standard of living for people around the world. We want people to be warm in the winter. We want people to have plentiful food supplies. We want people to have mobility and be able to drive a car. We want people to have goods and have factories that produce them. And so that Saturn and Aquarius, that progress that we've had, that we're seeing expand to the developing world, Mother Earth is just saying, too much, you cannot keep putting these fossil fuels into my oceans and into my air. Something's got to give. So the Uranus and Taurus is kind of meeting that, which is said, my Earth is limited in what it can provide. And Saturn and Aquarius saying, but we need, all these things in order to make life better for people around the world. And that square, unfortunately, happened in some really extreme weather events that truly got our attention.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the key, right? Like it got our attention. Mm-hmm. Our attention was like, whoa, add attention. Okay. Something is definitely happening to the structure with which I live in, and not just the social construct, but like my foundations of where my actual home on this planet might be getting really different. Right. Yeah. Enough. I also wonder if, with Uranus and Taurus and then Jupiter in Aquarius, if that is not a piece of what made people go, I got to travel because I only know this world. I got to go what else is in the world. Right. So to literally take our feet onto Mother Earth and go see it. Go see it. It's easy to hear about it on the internet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's another part of it too. And then recently we just saw people come together in Edinburgh, for a climate conference where people from the developing worlds are saying pretty much to the industrial countries, you broke it, you fix it. We are seeing effects of climate change in our homes and our communities. And we did not enjoy the progress that you did as an industrialized society. So it's up to you to pay for what we need to do. So that was another way the two were clashing. And so look to your own life too. Where is Uranus and Taurus? Where is Saturn and Aquarius? And where are they fighting? Where do you want to be free? And where is that sense of responsibility tying you? tying you down. So big questions, but it's easy to sit back with a square and say, well, that sucks. But squares are here for a reason. Like we've said, they bring attention, they get us moving, they've got incredible energy. So while, for example, if Uranus is in your first house and you want to be independent, Saturn's in your 10th house, you have a very heavy responsibility with your job. Maybe you're a healthcare worker and they're saying, we have fewer workers, you need to work more hours. And you are just like chomping at the bit there in Uranus. You need to figure out a way to make that work. When I'm not working, I'm going to go kayaking. I'm going to play video games. I'm not going to do errands or run chores. I'm going to find a way to be free when I can be free. So working with a square does involve finding points where we can agree and work together. And, you see it, businesses saying you don't want to wear a mask in our store. Here's our online shopping. We'll bring the goods out to your car. You don't believe that you should be vaccinated? Well, just take a test before you come into our place of business. So whatever, people are finding ways to work with this. With the climate conference that we just had, there were some agreements reached of things that, the industrial world's going to step up more and help out the developing world. So, using the energy of that conflict to start building bridges and helping people to work together is key.
I agree. I just couldn't agree more, which is a beautiful setup energetically for us to move into 2022, which I do think speaks very much towards it's come down, we've convalesced a little bit, and now we need accountability and application.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So we've had those squares. We'll have the last one on December 24th. And now we said, okay, let's figure out a way to make this work.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's why it's good that they're still within orb in 2022. We're still dealing with that conflict. And one planet I want to advise you to forget, because I tend to forget it sometimes, is Neptune, which likes to fly under the radar. But
quietly over there.
Yeah. The French astrologer André Barbeau predicted 2020 would be very difficult because, and he did that a number of years before 2020, and he even suggested a pandemic could be the outcome, the manifestation of these aspects. And what he pointed out was that Neptune in Pisces is floating between Saturn and Uranus and Jupiter for a certain amount of time at that 45-degree angle, that semi-square, which is a point of tension. And so Neptune's almost at that kind of apex of a minor T-square where the tension is released. And you certainly see with Neptune in Pisces, a sickness that sweeps the world that knows no boundaries. But also, I would argue that we've seen an increased compassion in the world since 2020. More empathy. If you look at a number of the books that are published and movies and TV shows that come out, there are many, many stories about people who do not have a place at the table. Sure. And there's been a building of empathy towards them, which I think is another use of that, or an indication from Neptune in Pisces, which understands we're one world, that each human being has a connection to the other. And also, I think Neptune is movies. Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting what's happened in movies in the last couple of years, while Neptune's been in this sort of awkward position that we can't go to the movie theater, which used to be a big occasion. You get a sitter, you'd go out to dinner, it would be an event. And then it's kind of tied to our TV sets now. And Netflix. Right. Yeah. So instead of, getting dressed up and going out, we put on our sweatpants and we flop on our couch and we reach for our remote and there's the movie. So movies are going through that sort of shifting and changing. I thought it was interesting last summer, Scarlett Johansson, who was the Black Widow in the Marvel series, ended up suing Disney. She said, I signed a contract that said I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to be up on the silver screen. And instead, I'm just being dumped into people's houses through Disney Plus. And that's not the contract I signed. And so we've kind of seen that transformation in movies. And I'm wondering if it will ever go back to what it was before all this.
Sure. Well, and it's kind of that same idea, I think, or thought process, like when we moved from all of the things on stage to the screen, right?
Yeah. So only a few people could see it on the screen, or on the stage, but many on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of, I feel like it's a little bit of that transition there as well.
Yeah. Not putting the genie back in the bottle. But I didn't want to leave 2021 without talking about the transiting lunar nodes and the eclipses, which I think are kind of exclamation points in the year. And so we've had since May of 2020 and until January, we've had our north nodes going through Gemini and our south node transiting through Sagittarius. And astrologer Judith Hill says that you think about that transiting north node as a tide coming in, and that transiting south node is a tide going out. And so if you think about that north node in Gemini, what's come in? I mean, information. How much information are we just drowning in? And we're hungry for it. The north node is the head of the dragon. So we are just hungry to know. We're getting information, not just from traditional news sources, but we're also going on social media. We're just picking up whatever information we can get because we just have so many questions. The world has become a very strange and different place. And so we just need to know. But, where's the tide been going out in our collective? And I think I found the experience, my experience with the transiting south node is not so much a tide going out, but a kind of vaporizing of things change. Like you think you have a handle on something and then it just turns into something else or it vanishes. And so you think of Sagittarius, you think of truth, understanding. So we've got all this information coming in, but what's really been eluding us and difficult to grasp is what all this means.
Right. What do we do with it now?
Yeah. So we've got all this conflicting evidence. And so how are we going to sort that out and figure out what is something that we could actually believe? So where has that north node been transiting in your chart, and have you had a lot of a tide bringing things in that area of your life? Yeah. And where's the south node? Is that where things have been a little foggier, that you've found things difficult to grasp?
Yeah, I'm at MCIC.
So which one is the north and which one is the south?
So the north node has been in my MC.
Okay, so definitely you've been out in the world getting lots of opportunities, but have you found then the south node? How would you describe that south node in your fourth house transiting?
Yeah, it has been a lot of letting go of old truths or old ideas. And really at first it was really like genuinely of letting go of my workspace, since my workspace is at home, because then everybody was home. They were all in my office. You know what I mean? So it was okay, hold on. I got to get a different truth.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it came over my Neptune and now is on top of my Uranus. So there has been just, the dissolving has been very real.
Yeah, that's your change. That's shape shifting, and you think that you have everything organized and things are flowing at home, and then everything changes, and you have to start all over again.
1000%. Which I'm also in a fourth house perfection year, so I was like, look, I got it. Wow. Home. What's going on at home?
And home is going to be crazy. It's not something I can hang on to, but it's something that I've got to be constantly changing and adapting and shifting with.
Yes.
Whereas, you've had a great north node too, lots of opportunities coming in for growth. But the lunar nodes lead us finally to the eclipses, because when we have a new moon or a full moon close to a lunar node, we have an eclipse. And so you think about this year, our first eclipse was a lunar eclipse, which is a culminating eclipse because it's a full moon, and it was at our south node in Sagittarius. And, looking back, May 26th, that was that time when we were, kind of in this fevered state. We had taken off our masks. We were getting back to life as we know it, as we thought we knew it. And so I think that eclipse there kind of emphasized just the joyousness, the Sagittarian quality of that time, even though it was temporary, even though it was fleeting. And then by June 10th, we got a solar eclipse, which started something at the North Node. And so again, we were still having our party then. But that eclipse sets the stage for 6 months. And I think that North Node solar eclipse in June really set us up very well to deal with what lay ahead. That we were going to have to go back into restrictions, that the pandemic was not completely over. But we almost have that sense of, this is not my first rodeo. I know how to do this now.
Yeah, I agree. I do feel like we're leaving a lot more informed, like, okay. Got some clarity.
Yeah, this is the information we need at this point to go through the next 6 months. Yeah. And just that confidence that, we can figure this out. We've got this, I think, was a big part of that Gemini North Node solar eclipse in June, that we had been through, by then, a year and a half. I guess maybe closer to maybe a year and a couple of months since the lockdown. So we'd learned a lot.
Oh yeah, we've seen plenty enough that I feel prepared.
Yeah,
and then I think other people in the chat too are feeling, rocked but prepared as well. So this is good news.
Yeah. And so tomorrow, as we're speaking, that big full moon in Taurus is growing, and tomorrow, or I guess while we're asleep tonight in the US, that the Earth is going to slip between the sun and the moon, and we're going to have a lunar eclipse at 27 degrees of Taurus. And again, this is sort of a culminating energy. And the reason that it's in Taurus, but the node is still in Gemini, is that they're close enough. And so you kind of think of the energy being both. We've got that sense of Gemini information, but Taurus, where the full moon will be, kind of tells us about the things that are important to us, the things that sustain our lives. Food, clothing, shelter, very important to us. And I've seen some headlines recently that make me think of this Taurus lunar eclipse happening. They'll say, there's the supply chain is breaking down. All of the things that you're ordering for Christmas are, on a cargo ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Christmas is ruined. And, you have to kind of go to Scorpio and say, oh, honey, Christmas is not on a cargo ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It just isn't. Have you never heard of Whoville? And so I think, we're starting to see kind of a sneak peek of what this next nodal axis will bring, is that, a big word that we also see in the collective right these days is inflation. And it's a word we know if we go to the store. Things are just, because of a wide variety of factors, more expensive. And so we're going to see a stronger emphasis on, what the actual things that we need to live our lives, food, clothing, shelter. But we're going to have, at the South Node, Scorpio, reminding us about value and the importance of not hoarding wealth, but sharing it and making the wealth move. For example, you get a tax refund for $2,000 and you go buy yourself a really sweet couch. Your neighbors admire it, you're just feeling good. But what if you took $1,000 and bought a couch not so good, still a sweet couch, but not as sweet. And you take $500 and invest it in someone's startup that you're really excited about. Take another $500 and give it to a charity that helps people pay their rent who are facing eviction. So at the end of the year, if you put all your money into the couch, you'll just have a couch that's a year older. But if the year with your $1,000 couch, you'll have a couch a year older. Again, not as sweet. But, a family's been able to forestall eviction because of you. You've invested in a company that's starting to grow and to hire people. And you've got a little bit of a return coming in. So I think that's a big part of the conflict we're going to see with the Taurus Scorpio axis.
I do too. And I think that the interesting part about Uranus in that space is this energetic principle that for money to be sustainable, it has to be in motion. So I think that there's a lot of conversation out there about how and where is the best way for you to keep your money in motion so that it will, because money got to be quite stagnant for many families. They figured out that life financially was not actually sustainable if the bottom fell out. So how do we make this work? And the principle of money in motion, electric money.
That might be a good theme for people to kind of meditate on tomorrow and tonight with the eclipse. How can I keep my money in motion? How can I make it work? Instead of being, something in a shoebox under my bed, metaphorically. So that's, I think, the end of this year, that's giving us a hint looking forward. But finally, December 4th, we're going to have our final eclipse in Sagittarius at the South Node. And that's just picture that point in your chart and just hear a big bang on the drum. Something is going to be ending. Something is going out. Something that's been working itself out is on its way out. I hope worldwide that it's COVID, that, we'll see, the next 6 months, this opens up a 6-month period. But I'm hoping also that what's going to be leaving us with this final solar eclipse at the South Node is a lot of this confusion about what is true, what is not true, that we've used this year and a half with the Gemini Sag axis to really figure out, how am I getting my information? How do I process my information? How do I arrive at what's true?
Well, and it's interesting because I just think about it, when I pull that down personally, we'll have this eclipse in Sag, and in the 4th house space for me, what will happen is my Sag will turn 18, and less than 8 weeks after that, she will go to Italy on her own to study art. So
wow.
A leaving.
And so what house is it in for her?
She is what house? Oh, she's a 9th house Sag.
Oh, well, how perfect. Yeah. with a solar eclipse in Sag in her 9th house, she's leaving home, leaving something behind and starting a new life.
And heading literally across the waters. She's taking that long distance trip. She's not just going to college. She's like, Mom, I'm going to Italy.
Well, as someone who's has 3 grown-up children, I can tell you there's nothing that makes a mother happier than when her children fly the nest and do well. You see them thrive and grow. That's what we bring them into the world for.
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for her. And she is Pisces rising, Cancer moon. She is an artist. And I'm like, well, this is where you go and study what it is. And she's going to go with the art group. So I am thrilled for whatever the adventure holds for her.
And so maybe that's part of this final solar eclipse in Sag. What adventure are you dreaming of?
Yeah, gosh.
It's a good way to end the year, I think, with that idea, because, the world's not always going to have a pandemic. We're not always going to be as limited as we are now. So maybe start making some plans.
Yep. I am making mine. Are you making yours? Do you have?
Yes. I have a son and daughter-in-law who live in Switzerland. And so we're hoping that we're going to make our first trip. It'll be in by then 3 years to see them, and take our granddaughter with us. So that's kind of what I'm got my eye on right now. How about you? Have you got some travel plans?
Oh, I do. Yes, I'm going to take my big one's going to go to Italy, and the little one and I are going to go to language school in Korea.
Wow. So I hope all of you who are listening are dreaming as well, and starting to create those plans in your mind if you aren't actually doing them yet.
Yeah.
In your life.
Well, thank you for coming over and looking back with us. It's refreshing to look back. As an astrologer, I'm like forward, or then I end up so far back that I'm like, well, in 1850, and it's like, well, what about just 6 months ago? What happened 6 months ago?
I know. I really admire those astrologers who write the columns, and so they're literally always a year ahead of everybody else. And that must be a pretty good trick to be able to get your mind, to the future and then back to the present.
Yes. You guys, I hope that you enjoyed the chat today and you heard something that you feel like is worth the time you took to show up, and definitely leave comments down below if you're watching back or watching again. We'd love to know what happened for you this year as you look back at your own chart. What did you identify the stops that you have made throughout 2021? So I love you guys, and we will see you next week for another Eat and Greet. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Stormy.